2. Arteta plays games with the opposition managers around team news. I never knew that. Arsenal need a win. When we face Nottingham Forest on Saturday afternoon, the moment the ball hits that net is going to be genuinely one of the best moments of the season so far. I think you'll be able to hear millions of Arsenal fans collectively breathe out. We are going to win, and we are going to win comfortably. I'm manifesting here, guys, allow me. But we also need a new sporting director. In the mania of the last few weeks, we didn't cover the news of Edu leaving on this channel as it happened, and things seem to have died down a bit since then. But that means I've had some time to collect my thoughts about it. And while I used to hate the phrase, everything happens for a reason, the older I get, the more sample I have of looking back at things and going, yeah, that kind of needed to happen. The more I see situations like this as an opportunity. In terms of who we're going to move for next, I don't have a name for you. So this isn't that video. I'm not going to sit here and lie and say, Luis Campos, yeah, I've got a 400-page dossier about him. I actually used to watch him play right back for Espasende back in the day. Roberto Alabe, he's my dad. But what we can do is get ourselves a clearer picture of what we want from any prospective appointment. So we know how to judge whatever ends up happening. We'll get to that in just a second. But first, let's talk Edu. Despite what I said about an opportunity, I'm always conscious in these situations of not just blindly going, yep, this is great news, because it has to be. Life is far more complicated than that, as we know, and we need to be careful what we wish for. Edu was a fantastic servant for Arsenal, and I wish him well. The job he did on building, objectively, one of the most valuable squads in the world, the character to withstand the flack he took for tearing up those contracts while going through the pandemic, the part he played in bringing some top-class talent to the club, the ambassadorial work, the re-establishing of Arsenal's image, the reconnection with the fans, and so on. He has been a huge part of this picture. But at the same time, if what's rumoured to be true about him wanting the CEO job and leaving because he didn't get it, then I'm kind of okay with him going. Even if that rumour's not true, he's leaving before the big project is done for basically more money and more power. And that, by the way, is absolutely fine. It's a job at the end of the day. But I like to think, for at least some people in that building, this project is more than just a job. And maybe that's naive, but regardless, have fun with Marinakis, mate. He seems like a lovely guy. And I also think I'm okay about it for some other reasons. I think language can be so influential in shaping our experience of the world. And it was always Edu and Arteta, wasn't it? In those long reads about how they got us back to being competitive, or the communication from the Cronkies. Never Edu himself, alone. And like Saka and Emil Smith-Rowe's lingual pairing in that chant, that coupling might have helped to hide some shortcomings for one side in the glow of the other's brilliance. I always felt Arteta was the ideas guy, the driver, and Edu was the connector. I'm not in the building, sure, but publicly we know who's signed off on the players, who's picked the system, who's developed the players, who's energized the stadium, who's communicated most to us recently, who the players speak about most glowingly, who those outside the club talk about, who the room goes quiet for, who we unite around. It is Arteta, our dictator or prime minister, depending on your point of view. And while Edu went ahead and did the right thing, there's probably a lot of switched on Arsenal fans, some of you watching, who could have said what he needed to do in 2019. We've got to get rid of our overpaid and underperforming players. We need to get younger. We need to sort out the wage bill, and we need to change the energy at the club. There's obviously more than that, and he actually did it, so credit to him. But I don't think he's pulled off some kind of genius masterclass alone, is my point. He's got our house in order. He's modernised our scouting. He's been a part of making us a modern club. Good. Not to sound like Roy Keane, but that's his job. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff we don't know, so we have to judge him on the public information. But considering he's had oversight for the women's team and the academy as well, and there's certainly been problems on those fronts in his tenure, I don't think he's exceeded expectations, is my point. Arsenal history will remember him fondly, but I think we're losing Emil Smith-Rowe, not Bukayo Saka. So in terms of where we go next, there's room for something a bit more dynamic. I want to give a list of 3 qualities I'm looking for in our next appointment. Of course, there's the possibility we shuffle things around, but I want these qualities to come in however we do it. First, I want someone with a bit more experience. Vinay, Garlic, Edu, Arteta, a lot of the guys who've been building this project from the start have been guys who are in either their first senior role or are currently in the most senior role they have ever been in. I like giving people opportunities. They can grow into the job. But I think there's room for something else at the club now. Experience and age gives you a natural authority. It means you're not necessarily trying to prove yourself, taking risks. You've done that. We have enough young, ambitious risk takers in the setup. I want someone who's been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Someone in the room whose professional reputation doesn't really need building, so they can be the voice of doom and reason at times. Someone who can say, no, we need to do this now, this big sale, whatever it is, because although it's unpopular and safe, it's the right thing to do. A manager's job is to win games, and a sporting director's job is to look at the health and the long-term vision of a club. If you've got two guys, one young, hungry, ready to learn, and another guy, older, wiser, experienced, who's more suited for what job? I want someone who's seen it all and can bring those intangible lessons you can only learn with time. Next, sorry to state the obvious, we're not Brentford or Brighton. So while, yes, I would love someone who has an ability to unearth the next gem for £10 million who becomes an £100 million player, we do have money. And there's a part of the market I don't feel we're quite in yet. Some of that will come with winning major honours. But when you look around at our major competitors, Kane, Bellingham, Haaland, these guys weren't secrets. There's this strange thing I've noticed with certain Arsenal fans, where they want to beat Real Madrid in the final of the Champions League this year, but they don't want to pay the same wages, compete for the same talent, or disrupt anyone in the team they like or see potential in to get there. And the two don't go together. I want Arsenal to be in the conversations about Musiala's next contract, about Florian Wirtz's next contract, about where Camavinga is going. And at the moment, I do wonder if we have the pull as an executive team outside of Arteta to do that, especially outside of England. The contacts, the knowledge of the family, the agents, the conversations starting 2-3 years before the move. I don't want a return to Raul Sanyehi's little black book of contacts, but it does help. It feels like Rice was maybe the one player we've signed who could have gone anywhere. But outside of England, do we have that yet? I don't know. And I wonder if the right sporting director can help us get there. Of course, I'd want Carlos Baleba before Brighton get him as well. I'm not saying that. But we're not here to flip players for profit. We're here to win. And to do that, you need the best players. So I wonder if there's more scope, especially internationally, to be in those conversations. And thirdly, I'm interested in someone who can communicate a vision about where Arsenal is headed. As I've said before, I think Arsenal can establish themselves as the London club in the next 5 to 10 years. I think it's possible, in the same way that Real are the Madrid club, and if our closest competition is Chelsea and Tottenham, say, I think it's doable. While I think Edu was decent at this, I felt especially towards the end of his time at Arsenal, we heard from him less and less. And even then, it was often about what was happening going backwards, as opposed to where the club's aims were. Maybe there was less to say as the project grew, and fair enough. But I want someone who can show us where we're going. Maybe he did, and I just missed it. But if I, one of the most engaged Arsenal fans I know, didn't really know what Edu's vision for the club was outside of win major trophies, there's a problem. Yes, trophies, of course. But the stadium, the players, our place in world football, academies, outreach, community. Chiqui Begiristain is a master of this. Khaldoon is always talking. Jim Ratcliffe now, Florentina Perez, Joan Laporta. Whatever you think of them, they're always communicating and they know their club's worth. I always see quotes from all of them, and I'm not even a fan of their clubs. It's not about talking for the sake of it, but having a figurehead for the club outside of Mikel, I think would be really useful. Someone great on camera with top communication and language skills is always preferable. I think Edu was fine, but he wasn't dazzling. All that said, to give you a name, right now, Luis Campos is a standout name for me. But that's just some of my thoughts. Let me know what you think down below. So, we have a big opportunity to do something here. But with that opportunity comes a discussion about something that worries, I think, a lot of Arsenal fans. So, let's talk. I made a joke earlier about Arteta being a dictator. And I was joking, but in every joke, there's an element of truth. We know how important Arteta is at the club, And the very reliable David Ornstein said recently that it isn't particularly easy to call him into question right now. I've said this a few times recently, so forgive me, but it's worth saying again. But the truth is, you can't compete consistently at top-level club football without a manager, usually one person, being a bit dictatorial and dogmatic. Name me a consistently good team in the Premier League era, and I guarantee there is one manager with their fingerprints all over it. Guardiola, Mourinho, Klopp, Alex Ferguson, guys who you wouldn't be surprised if they decided what time the players went to the toilet. It's the risk you take in football. You have to hand the keys over and give your manager some power. Not too much, I mean, don't give him shares in the club, but enough to fully realise his vision. This continental head coach thing has never ever worked consistently in this country, and it didn't work for us. Reports that Arteta dismissed Steve Round for questioning the Raya deal, if wholly true, which I doubt, frankly, aren't concerning for me because he was right. If that's true and it was one single argument, which I doubt, sorry it hurt Steve's feelings, but I'm in the business of Arsenal winning, not making everyone happy. And I do genuinely think Arteta is a genius. And if you don't agree, fine, just play a numbers game with me. The last World Cup final reached 1.5 billion people. So if you believe in geniuses, then out of 1.5 billion people who are interested in football, isn't the man who Pep Guardiola, a definite genius, was calling at 30 years old for tactical briefing, the man whose first managerial job was one of the biggest clubs in football, the man who was a Trossard boot away from the youngest ever Premier League manager to win the competition, is he not at least in the conversation for being a genius in this field? So I want to back that guy. But sometimes when you are at that level, in my experience, when you're really good at something, those people can get a little bit rigid. When so few people can challenge you in your field, the barrier of entry is so high, yeah, you could probably get a bit comfortable. Probably unconsciously, those people, Arteta included, think, well, I'm usually right, so I just need to get people to see my vision, and they will in the end. So with that said, whatever we do, I think Arteta needs a strong challenger, a personality who will really match him at the same level. And that's what I think this next appointment needs to be. Arteta and Edu were friends, and that's great, but it's not always easy to challenge your friends. I don't care if Mikel has a lot of power. He deserves it. I care when power goes unchecked. Not because challengers are always right, not because Mikel's always right, but because two people who can genuinely challenge one another can stretch each other's thinking and help see things from a different perspective, even if they don't agree, that's always good. Regularly saying to someone, I don't agree, but here's why, is healthy for all parties. Look, maybe Edu was that guy behind the scene. He was fiery and challenging to Arteta, but we can only work with what's public, and from little bits of what I hear, that's not the way he was. Mikel needs someone, I think, with a bit more experience and gravitas. Different background, different approach, a fresh way of thinking. There's so many smart people out there. Someone who can say, no, you can't keep him for one more year. You need to sell him now because you made your bed when you agreed that contract. Someone who says, okay, Mikel, I've just read a 10,000 word essay critiquing you from some young coach who sent this to my desk. You don't get meditation time today. You need to read it and tell me why he's wrong. Proverbially. I'm not sure whether we do a direct replacement. James King has come in on the contract side to replace Richard Garlick, becoming managing director. So maybe there's a shake-up happening. Maybe not. I don't know. Edu had a lot of responsibility across the club, and we might want to split that up. But wherever it comes in the setup, this might have happened for a reason. Because now I think is the time to give Mikel an experienced killer operator and a challenger. We forget Mikel's primary job is to win matches. And I think it's time someone came in on his level who can take a bit of weight off his shoulders.
If you like The Different Knock, you can support us on Patreon monthly, or you can buy us a coffee.